Welcome to this week's episode of Surgeon Interrupted. We have Colin joining me back in the studio because it's a holiday week, so we're going to bring a little bit of holiday cheer and, life updates after medicine to y'all.
Yeah, we're recording week of Christmas, I guess. Yeah, a few days before. So this is your first Christmas, not on call, not at the hospital, nothing in 10 years? Maybe
Yeah,
more
I mean,
if you did some in med school. Yeah,
realistically, for sure. Well, M4 year, we were good. That was okay.
that's
But
true.
it was like interview season. So it was weird, honestly. Like I did some interviews very close to the holidays. I think I had an interview like 2 days before Thanksgiving.
You had
That
to
was my
drive
first
to
one.
Iowa in like a snowstorm.
That was
like,
right after the New Year.
yeah.
Yep, I did do that. So, yes, I mean, for sure, by the letter of the law, this is the first holiday in 8 years that I've had not affiliated with the hospital, which is huge. I know you and I were just recently talking about like intern year. I was on ped surge, and that was a real crazy service at the time, and I definitely was covering holidays for that.
Yeah, I do feel like even you not being at the hospital anymore, we've definitely shifted the way that we approach holidays. Like we're still not doing anything for Christmas, like we're staying here. We don't have family around us. It's just us and Edley and Beignet hanging out at home. But that's kind of the way that we've always done it together. And that's sort of what we know and like. So I do feel like in that sense, that style of like celebrating the holiday has kind of stuck with us.
Yeah, and I do think it's great, like, to not have to pay jacked up, flights around the holiday time and things like that, and we have our good traditions at home, but I do feel like it does also say something potentially, like, a little bit sinister that with all of my free will, I still choose to just stay at home, and
Yeah.
I'm working all week other than the holiday day. Like, I have meetings through Wednesday, and then I have more meetings starting up again Friday. So I'm glad, and for the record, I mean, you guys we'll find out if we actually stick to this or not, but Colin and I have actually blocked out the holiday day itself. So Thursday should be like a no tech day.
Yeah. Unless we're playing Hogwarts Legacy or something. That doesn't quite count.
That's good tech.
Yeah.
That's called good tech when we play a video game together. And certainly we just played some more of It Takes Two this past weekend. Super fun game. I would definitely recommend it to like any cozy gamers, couples who actually would like to be able to play together and not have to hand off the controller like we do for some of our other games.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this, I do feel like this holiday time is always, well, I shouldn't say always, but I'm sure for a lot of healthcare workers, residents specifically, just kind of a tough time, certainly like a weird time, right? In that even if you like your co-residents and, you guys are doing something fun for the holidays or whatever at the hospital, you're still like at the hospital, probably can't go home. You got to kind of create your own little traditions there. And obviously you still talk to a lot of, currently working physicians. And this does feel like a particularly rough time. If you're already having a little bit of a tough time to then go into these holidays, it's also sort of the halfway mark, I suppose, on kind of the hospital calendar year. So like, in that sense, you are still in it a little bit. I know you kind of feel that just from kind of all the interactions you have and everything. Like, does that bring you back too much, or are you able to kind of separate that now?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that probably like anchoring before phone calls, that type of technique, it is helpful because if I am centered and I show up to a conversation with a trainee and they share whatever is going on, I do feel like there's good distance between me and that. But it's kind of like if somebody catches you off guard, or let's say that like am kind of like untethered that day, or I don't anchor right before a conversation, then, or sometimes I hear like the most awful things. And yeah, I mean, it would be impossible for me to be like, yeah, I don't feel anything about that. No, of course, like my heart goes out to them. It's a really hard time of year. I think that July and August, pretty fun time. Those tend to go fast. It's like a new academic year. Definitely people are still like looking at balancing relationships and their work and things like that. And then fall can be romantic, but that's where I kind of see morale start to dip. And then by November, yes, it can be brutal because that's when you really feel the effects of like, oh, I'm not allowed to go home for Thanksgiving on top of all this other stuff. And, the weather turns in most places, the sheen of the new year wears off. It's not uncommon that I see people in the fall are kind of like, okay, maybe this is just like one bad rotation. It's just the ICU. This is temporary. And then on their winter rotations, things aren't necessarily better or meaningfully different. And then that can be really discouraging. Like, I do think that a lot of things, like you said, they culminate in the winter. So this can be a hard time of year. And the holidays are also a really stark reminder of the fact that like life and the world is going on around you. You're kind of frozen in time at the hospital, but seasons are changing, things are going on. I do want to bring up really quickly what that anchoring technique is. It was something Maylee's taught me, but essentially it's this idea that you can physically anchor yourself before a difficult or maybe like activating conversation, because that's what I would say if I'm just off the cuff talking to a trainee, something like that, just more that it has the potential to be activating. So you take an open palm, and she had taught me people will sometimes do this with door frames. Like, let's say someone is calling you. And again, you don't love getting phone calls from this person. So you go, you use a door frame, a wall, even a desk, and you lay your open palm on that. And you just kind of like recenter yourself. It's just a fit. I do find that I have a lot more success tying those recentering reminders to physical action. So that's just kind of like a helpful little trick. And it does make a difference noticeably for me in terms of how much I can get carried away by the conversation or end up somewhere I don't want to be at the end of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think having those physical cues for you is very helpful. Just have something to literally even just like get your mind off of it, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that's probably more than anything. It's just like, oh, I got to think about my hand touching this door here. And then you're like kind of broken from that
Or
panic
you and
or anxiety or whatever it is.
the panic, the anxiety, but you and I were also talking about this recently where the untethered soul talks about the way that some of us like forget that we're watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am a soul that sits in a seat of consciousness and like things can happen to my meat husk or body or things like that. But certainly I think a lot of the prolific, really peaceful Zen people, you could kind of do anything to them, right? And they're sitting in their seat of consciousness. So there's that little bit of distance. And he likens it to you're sitting in a room watching TV or a movie. Some people just forget entirely that they're watching it, right? They're sitting at the edge of their seat. They're tachycardic as if the car chase scene is happening to them. Like physically, the body is responding as if they're in it, not that they're watching TV. And I think that this is very well demonstrated by the fact that when I am watching TV, I forget I'm watching TV. And my, like, literally, I have full fight or flight. I'm like 100% in. I think you've seen that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see you reacting that way to like watching media.
No.
You always know that you're just like sitting on the couch relaxing.
Yeah. Yes, you have a very immersive experience. It doesn't have to be like an immersive movie. It's just like
It's just like the Vampire
yeah,
Diaries.
yeah. You're like I am in Mystic Falls. Okay, so you're 8 months out from the hospital
Hmm.
now, basically. Yeah. Have you found your Zen? I mean, you're talking about finding, peace and Zen. Have you been able to do that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely like much more of the time than before. I do view it, I used to see things very black and white. And so I definitely, especially when younger, I'd be like, a person is Zen or they aren't. In any cross section in time, I now statistically have a better chance and a higher likelihood that I will be feeling Zen than not. I think that one way I would describe it is I think of the Begin Again movie, the one with Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo
Yeah.
that I like.
Mm-hmm.
But Mark Ruffalo's character, like 3/4 of the way through, he is talking about how down he's been, and he's talking about like these really beautiful moments, like when they're sharing, it's kind of like a pearl. And he was like, lately I've just had to travel a lot more string to get to the pearl. And I definitely felt that way before leaving medicine. Now I would say conversely, I don't have to travel that much string in between pearls. I feel like I really am very like appreciative and I can access them just like much more frequently and and there's a lot more pearls.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So just a quick update for people. I'm sure if you regularly listen to this, you generally know what you've been up to since leaving, but just give a quick, literally, what are you doing every day?
Yeah, so I am having fun. I'm doing what I call revenge sleeping in, and it's awesome. Like, Colin's been making fun of me. I'll be in bed 10, 11 hours a night. I just have fun. I've always loved sleeping in my bed, and certainly, I feel there's a lot of lost time to make up for, and I'm having a lot of fun catching up in that regard. It is not making me much of a mover and shaker in the mornings, but again, I feel like this is a new phase, and I'm having fun. In terms of what my regular workday looks like, I do consult for a couple companies, and um, that's on a regular basis. Those like, I have longer contracts in those consulting capacities, and the work that I do is really in the realm of like digital marketing, but for companies that either are selling medical products or selling to a medical community. So really this actually pretty niche thing of like medical digital marketing, and that's been really fun. It is funny because I don't have formal training in that regard, but Colin's whole professional career for the better part of a decade now has been digital marketing and SEO. So admittedly, while I was not listening for the first few years of that, couldn't make heads or tails of it. And again, I was like mid residency, especially since graduating residency now. I've spent, a couple years really trying to be a sponge. Same thing, same game as medical school, but be a sponge and learn from you. And now we've built multiple companies, multiple websites together. So in addition to the consultant work, actually I am building a website right now. That's been fun. It's a steep learning curve. I know we're using Tilda for that, so it's going to be a minute before I'm like coding from scratch. That's just something else I want to learn. And I would say that in addition to the consultant work, I have been writing a lot for the past 3 years. And in that vein, my book comes out in February. So we've been really working hard on the book tour and yeah, the marketing plan for that. Very excited. It comes out February 24th. It's called Surgeon on the Edge. We're going to do a book cover reveal next week and talk a little bit more about that. But we have all our advanced reader copies already out either in the mail or in the hands of our advanced readers right now. And so there's just a lot that goes in behind the scenes that honestly I think we can do a deep dive on like this spring, just in terms of like sharing with people what that whole process involves. Because now the book is done. This is not even writing, editing, proofreading, line editing of the book. It's beyond that. And there's still a lot to do. So we've been working on that. Uh, I mean, you know what I'm doing as
Well,
well as
I think
I'm
important
doing.
to highlight too, because we've talked about, how in kind of the prep for you to leave medicine, there was a lot of taking every meeting and doing all this networking and building up this base of, potential that just kind of didn't exist there when you're at the hospital all the time. But I still feel like you are spending a lot of time doing that, which I think is maybe important for people to hear, just that it doesn't just stop, you really didn't take the route, which was you had a clear, I'm moving over into X job and now I get a salary for that. This is just an ongoing process. And that's where you find these opportunities. It is just I met someone, they told me about this person, I connect with them, and maybe we just have a 30-minute conversation and it was just a nice person to meet. And then we kind of move on from there. But that is where I still think, frankly, not the bulk of your time, but a lot of your time is spent. And a lot of that is through the capacity of HC too, and just meeting new potential writers and collaborators and things like that. But yeah, I mean, does that still do you still feel that you're stretched thin? I mean, have you been able to find the balance from working constantly at the hospital and being on call to, okay, now you're not on call all the time, but you don't have set hours, so you can be made available kind of whenever you need. How have you been able to stop
Mhm.
yourself from just constantly working?
No, that's a good point. I do think that that lesson, like this takeaway of, because people, of course, ask me sometimes, okay, well, I want to leave medicine. How do I get a job? How did you find your next job? And like, I cannot emphasize enough. None of it came from a job posting. It didn't come from Indeed.com. These types of jobs just are not posted. There are companies that can utilize my specific set of skills and my expertise. And I basically want to be out there and find those companies and contribute to their teams. And so that does take a ton of gamesmanship, networking, pitching, understanding what you bring to the table, which is going to be, of course, unique for all of us. So even when I do meet with people or share my story specifically, I say like, well, you got to adapt this for you. Like I definitely, my graphic design skills are pretty good now, a lot better now than they were even a year ago, but I do all the graphic design and social media at the HC and for other people who I've worked with on different contracts and their brands and their sites. I've been delivering like full suite brand guidelines and things like that. So these are all, they're good skill sets, but especially for doctors, we get so rigidly in this idea of like, do I have a degree that will allow me to apply for the job on Indeed.com or whatever, apply for a LinkedIn job? I don't have a degree in marketing, but this goes back to one of my core arguments, which is that anyone who has an MD and becomes a surgeon can probably learn a whole host of other skills and like pretty quickly. And I'm not saying overnight because I didn't learn any of this stuff overnight, but on the order of a couple years. I mean, would you agree? Can you speak to this? Like from the
Mhm.
outside, I I feel like I'm pretty teachable, despite what residency made me think and feel about myself.
Yeah, I mean, certainly while you're in residency, you didn't do any of this stuff. It was
No.
just residency. And then even the first year, really, like into your attending job, just building the practice, and
Yeah,
that was
just
the full
focused on
focus.
work.
Yeah. So really until, I mean, I guess 2.5 years, right? We're coming up
Yeah.
on, yeah, about 2.5 year mark. But
I learned fast. That's what
yeah,
my question was. You're like sidestepping it in a way that people are gonna be like, "Wow, he dodged that so
no, you do learn
masterfully."
fast. And you also still have like the surgeon's work ethic. So you're just going
Well,
to,
yeah, you want me to speak to right, my hours. I like having flexible hours, but yes, this goes back to we are still working through a couple problems because I just at this point, it's like, I'm 34. It feels like teaching an old dog new tricks because I do not take bathroom breaks. I do not drink water during the day. I really will just sit in my office at home and sit on the computer for easily 8 hours at a time, working the whole time. Just sit there, not really moving. I don't fidget a lot. I don't need to move. I don't need walking breaks. If I needed walking and bathroom breaks, I just already probably wouldn't have made it as a surgeon. So then sometimes Colin, comes in at like 5 or 6 p.m. and he gets to hear about how I have a headache. I mean, we have the same conversation most days a week. I say, I have a headache. You say, have you had any water? I say, no, I haven't had any water. I've been working in here. At which point he reminds me that I have free will and I'm sitting in my own home. Like I'm 2 rooms over from where free access to water would be. But there's a lot yet to unlearn because I just don't really like give myself permission to take those water breaks. I bring this real pit bull work ethic to the function that some people like. It's not in my best overall like health and self-interest.
no, no, but you're
But
definitely,
I'm very productive.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, what we've been talking about recently is, how you still are searching for that middle path because you're trying to give yourself more breaks and relaxation time and, reclaim some of this maybe semi lost time, over the last however many years. But you're struggling to break those up a little bit, right? Where it's once you've entered, I'm just messing around mode, that you go like too hard into it, and then it's hard to come back. And you talked about this sort of revenge sleeping in. Um, you have any, I don't know, advice or ways that you're thinking about trying to combat that? I mean, we're coming into kind of New Year's resolutions here. Is there something you've been thinking about in terms of like how best to sort of balance that?
I think being more intentional and clear with myself about my schedule is probably the biggest thing because marking off blocks of time or whole days of the week that are like, this is for an artistic or personal pursuit or something like that, I think that that will help me more in the future because, yes, I don't really have like a halfway or a medium button. So, for instance, I know you and I talked about like this week for the day before Christmas, I have just like a fully packed day. It's like a full day of meetings, and I'm just going to work hard that whole day. But I do think that I need to be cognizant of that and utilize it in a way where then another day that week is just like 100% offline. I think probably, and it might mean reading my book, finishing my Malcolm Gladwell book, things like that. But just, I feel like for me personally and going into 2026, a big thing is like this intention, just setting intentions. Cause I really don't, I've done so much work to feel like I'm not somebody where my life just happens to me. But yet, even even in my new job and things like that. I actually think for me, it's very easy to just kind of lapse and rest on my laurels. And then suddenly my life is just happening to me again. And yeah, my job's different, but I'm still working like a dog at it. And so I think that intentionality, creating space, that's all part of it.
Yeah. Do you have any New Year's resolutions lined up yet? Have you started planning?
One of the biggest ones, which this is related, is to treat my nervous system like it is an asset. And I literally have been missing this piece all along. I have, I've known since I was a child. I do feel like it was ingrained in me. Brain is an asset. Like, protect your mind. We're going to invest in your education. Your brain will be the thing that is like of most value to you. And then, of course, as you know, when I was a surgeon, my hands were insured for over $1 million. They were an asset. We protected them. Literally, I can go back and I can trace. I wore a helmet. I wore a seatbelt. I protected my brain. I didn't do brain addling drugs. I like really protected the asset. I stopped skiing. When I got into medical school, I quit rock climbing for my hands, like all these things. But yet I never treated my nervous system like it was even an entity that was, on the playing field. And it definitely took a beating consequently. So I think that what's great about some modern workplace kind of professional development ethos is just this idea that, like, I mean, a person's, certainly a leader, but really any person's nervous system is an incredibly valuable asset that they should be paying attention to and protecting and nurturing and all these things. So for me, that's a big thing top of mind for me right now. And I'm going to continue to chew on what that looks like and delineate some different resolutions from there.
Okay, I'm in support of that. That feels like the sort of catch-all for all the little things we've been talking about, just generally taking it easier and, making sure that you're not getting to that end of the day where you're just fraught and you're kind of a live wire. Cause that is what you used to be a lot of the time in residency. Even when you're attending, it was just, you know, you'd come home and we had to be very delicate because you were like just exposed and consequently would sort of force you to shut down, and then you couldn't do much else other than just kind of rewatch a comfort show or eat the food that you like, and it got you kind of stuck in those loops. So I do think that's kind of the first step towards continuing to like open yourself up and just stay open to new opportunities and new people and new ideas, which certainly kind of, as you talked about, this is just, it's an ongoing process. You're going to have to kind of keep trying new things and also being able to like find time for things that you enjoy and like refresh you, I do think is kind of one of the underpinning missions of even what we're doing at the HC is just like, a sort of emotionally fulfilled physician is a better physician. And I know you're not practicing medicine anymore, but it's obviously applicable to just people in general. So I do think that is one thing that we just never talked about before, which was like, how do we, fill that void outside of work things and outside of even just like our relationship or hanging out with Beignet and Edley? Like, what things do you like to do? What stimulates you in a way that, just cannot be accessed unless you are feeling safe and fulfilled, and then can kind of take that next step.
I enjoyed building my Legos
Mm-hmm.
last weekend, and then, as you recall, I'm gonna blow up your spot, which is that I asked for the Hogwarts Lego set because I was like, "I like this, and I wanna make a little Hogwarts." That got shot down immediately.
Yeah, it feels like a bad gateway into just like a pretty expensive. Also, I get that you like to build you like to build your Legos, but I don't know that that is the most like mind expanding new hobby for you, to just follow very specific instructions, build like one thing, and then just like
You
put it
asked me
off in a
what's
corner
fun.
and like
Yeah,
not
you asked
let
me what's
anyone touch it.
fun. I don't
Yeah, I know,
I don't
but
like free creative play. I like structured play. But
yeah,
yeah, well, we'll keep noodling on it for sure. Your point's well taken.
I think it would be better for you to pursue like, okay, we like a Zen garden or something. Why don't we get a plant that you take care of, or you draw some things rather than just we follow some instructions. I like Legos too, but
Yeah, but you don't like following the instructions. You want Legos to just like build what your mind conceives.
right, which is kind of how Legos are meant to be. Well, as we get closer to Christmas, and likely a lot of people are going to listen to this kind of over the holidays here, do you have any specific advice for people that might be spending it at the hospital or away from family? Is there anything that you kind of did back when you were working that job to make it a bit easier to get through it? Any words of wisdom, any quotes you got off the top of your head that you like?
I don't have a ton of great coping mechanisms that I used back in the day. I would just mostly say, like, even if I took holiday call, then the moment I was off holiday call, then we would start drinking. In terms of quotes, I do think to leave things on a positive note, I would say, don't let a bad day trick you into thinking that you have a bad life.
That's nice.
Because, yeah. So we wish you guys all the best holidays, from us to you and yours. And thank you for being here this year. I'm very excited. We have a lot coming up in 2026 that we cannot wait to share with you. And and grateful for this ride.
Yes, me as well. No, that's very nice. This has been, one of the most interesting years of my life, certainly like of ours together. It's, really been quite transformative, I think, certainly for you. It's been, very nice to see you kind of come out of the pattern, that you kind of got forced into. So if this is, where you're headed, I think you're on a great path. And certainly, I think you're creating a great example for people that may be thinking of doing something different.
Thank you. And yes, I think that that's a huge piece of it, though, is just that the human mind, for most of us, like we can't conceive of it until we have seen somebody else do it. And so I'm excited for everyone who wants to kind of put their own spin on it. But it's been fun for me to share some of the journey. Thanks for listening to this episode of Surgeon Interrupted. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars. For more shows and content like this, check out hippocratic-collective.com. Until next week, happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.